out of this world, the current commander of the International Space Station, about to break a big record tonight. Here's ABC's Gio Benitez.
They call it the Peggy factor, Mission Control's code word for the way superstar astronaut Peggy Whitson always gets the job done.
I love it up here.
Tonight, Commander Whitson making history with her record for any American. By the time she lands in September, her tally will be 666 days.
666 days in space.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
If I could turn the page and time that I'd rearrange just a day or two. Close my eyes. Then I couldn't find a way, so I settled for one day to believe in you. Tell me lies. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. Tell me lies. Tell me lies. Oh no, you can't disguise. You can't disguise. No, you can't disguise. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. Although I'm not making plans, I hope that you understand there's a reason why. Close your eyes. No more broken hearts. We're better off apart. Let's give it a try. Tell me lies. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. Tell me lies. Tell me lies. Oh no, you can't disguise. You can't disguise. No, you can't disguise. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. If I could turn the page and time that I'd rearrange just a day or two. Close my eyes. I couldn't find a way, so I settled for one day to believe in you. Tell me lies. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. Tell me lies. Tell me lies. Oh no, you can't disguise. You can't disguise. No, you can't disguise. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. Tell me lies. Tell me lies. Oh no, you can't disguise. You can't disguise. No, you can't disguise. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology,
and it's a painful process to bring it back again. Yeah, right. Welcome to the Tori Says Show. It's the 27th of April, 2021. So there's a lot of recycling. Like I said yesterday, it feels like nobody has any news to talk about. They're recycling information, right, that is already out there, making it a big deal. Why are they bringing it now when it's over a decade old, right? And some of it is 3 years old. So I'm going to show you how they're making a big deal about, Mike Pompeo calling out John Kerry, who, by the way, is in China in the middle of Taiwan talks, which is like, why are you stirring the pot? See, that's the thing. This is a human quality that I just don't understand. If you don't want trouble and you want to maintain your course, right? Stop, pooping where you eat and stop stirring pots. Then people leave you alone. Because the minute you start stirring pots, things start rising to the surface again that you didn't want anyone to see. That's usually how it happens. So here is, at the time, Secretary Pompeo threatening Iran and slamming John Kerry. Here's a report from CNN from 2018.
For joining us.
Elise, it's great to be with you.
Let's start with North Korea. You said yesterday you're going to begin negotiations with the North Koreans, and you'll be meeting with your foreign minister colleague up in New York. But how much do you think ultimately a deal with North Korea is going to end on the relationship between President Trump and Kim Jong-un?
So that relationship is certainly very important, as is the relationship between Chairman Kim and President Moon. They had their Inter-Korean summit this past week where they made incremental progress, good stuff. President Trump's always known that we needed first to stop their testing of their nuclear weapon systems as well as their missiles. We've accomplished that. And then the process of full denuclearization can begin to take place. So we're working on that. There have been lots of conversations, lots of work, lots of negotiation at multiple levels. But your point that the two leaders will ultimately have to finish this thing off, close this deal, is certainly the case.
Is the president allowing Kim Jong-un to set the pace and scope, knowing that he made these commitments and trust that he'll make that decision ultimately?
We knew the pace would be uneven, but that progress each and every day was important. We think we're getting that. Remember, the sanctions remain in place. The world sanctions, not America's sanctions. The UN Security Council resolutions demand that Chairman Kim make this decision to denuclearize. And those sanctions and the enforcement of those sanctions will continue until such time as that occurs. That's the important element that is different from what previous negotiators have done. We've always in America handed him a pile of money, or his father a pile of money, and said, we hope you'll denuclearize. Our approach is different. It is to continue to enforce the sanctions until such time as we get to the end of the process.
Okay, let's move to Iran, and particularly Iraq and Syria. You've had 2 attacks by Iranian backed militias in U.S. diplomatic facilities in Iraq. The U.S. has said that it's going to make sure all Iranian troops are going to leave Syria and is willing to stay the course. Are we headed towards a confrontation with Iran?
Well, Iran has been confronting the world as the world's largest state sponsor
Seems
of
there's
terror
an escalation
for
here.
quite some time. They have armed militias, the Lebanese Hezbollah, now Kataib Hezbollah, and militias in Iraq. They're arming the Houthis in Yemen, launching missiles into the Gulf states. The United States has begun to apply economic and diplomatic pressure on Iran to prevent them from doing this. That's our mission. And it is true, Elise. We have told the Islamic Republic of Iran that using a proxy force to attack an American interest will not prevent us from responding against the prime actor. That is, we will not let Iran get away with using a proxy force to attack an American interest. Iran will be held accountable for those incidents.
Even militarily?
They're going to be held accountable. If they're responsible for the arming and training of these militias, we're going to go to the source.
And you criticized Secretary of State John Kerry, former Secretary Kerry, for his meetings with Iran, saying he needs to get off the stage. But can you tell me, how is this jeopardizing your efforts right now?
No American, and in particular, no former Secretary of State, should be actively seeking to undermine the foreign policy of the United States of America. You know, frankly, that's what Secretary Kerry's problem. He always refused to treat our enemies like enemies. And here he is today as the former Secretary of State telling our adversaries, the world's largest state sponsor of terror, people who are conducting assassination attempts in Europe, just wait out this administration, giving foreign policy advice directly contrary to what President Trump is trying to achieve on behalf of America.
Is it working?
Every American, especially former Secretary of States, should be advocating for America's foreign policy. It's that straightforward.
The president said last night, Mr. Secretary, that, and again this morning, that key allies are worried about the declassification of some of these Russia documents. Why are they concerned? Who's concerned? And didn't you, when you were CIA director, anticipate this might happen?
Well, I'll leave to the intelligence community and FBI and Justice Department to make the decisions about particular documents. I'm frankly not familiar with the contents of them, but I'll say this. I am very confident that this administration won't do a single thing which will put at risk a source, a method, our partners around the world, We haven't done so to date, and I am very confident that President Trump and our team won't do so in the future.
Do you think this is all a witch hunt, this Mueller probe, as the president has said?
I've been clear since I was first in front of the Senate for my confirmation hearing as the CIA director, that we understand that there are many countries attempting to undermine American democracy and Western values, and that in 2016, and frankly in elections before that, the Russians attempted to interfere in our election. I would add to that list in 2018 and perhaps in 2020 as well, China, Iran, North Korea, non-state actors, each of whom has an interest in trying to undermine Western democracy, especially here in the United States. We are working our tails off to prevent them from having any impact on any election anywhere in the United States.
Bob Woodward in his book suggested that the president felt that this Russia probe is, weakening him and U.S. diplomacy. Have you found that in your meetings?
I have found that moving away from leading from behind has been welcomed by the world. The partners I met with, the CIA director, and just this week I met with another half a dozen. They understand that America is back. We are engaged. We are leading from a core set of principles that they all can rally around and begin to help us build coalitions to solve some of the most difficult problems facing this world that were left to us by the previous administration.
The Woodward book describes a president who doesn't understand national security, a cabinet that is moving things around to save the country from the president's national security. Have you seen that? Do you do that?
I find that absolutely ludicrous. Be careful. There aren't many members of the president's cabinet who have spent as much time with him as I have. I briefed him almost every day as CIA director. I see him and talk to him every day now. This is a president who is fully informed, well briefed, listens, asks hard questions, and is leading his foreign policy team towards solving so many of the problems that plague this world. I wish the previous administration had acted with such diligence and power, but it was left to us. We'll get it right.
And that is when he first slammed Kerry, right? And this is why he then moved into the State Department. Because many, many times I've said that the biggest atrocities in regards to covert and clandestine operations are executed via the State Department. They're dirtier than anything. They do like the international office is insane. All of them are. I mean, no one's ever gotten back to what's happening there, and we should revisit the State Department today under the direction of the Truman National Security Project or Institute. They keep changing their name, that recruit for the Council of Foreign Relations, and they push their agendas. I mean, now they're the ones running it. And let's not forget that the former board of directors on a company where Hunter Biden was vice president is now running the show. This is just pure insanity, and it seems like a lot of nepotism going around and everything. So I think we need to travel back in time. I'll take us, I believe we should go to 2011, where there were discussions about cartel violence and the Iranian connection to all of these things. It was quite interesting. I believe that you might even see me in this hearing. Spot Tori. Can you spot Tori? So this is quite a wild thing that I just listen to what is being said. And those of you watching, can you spot Tori?
Testimony. Let me just say from the outset, and I think we're going to have a very lively discussion, a good dialogue here today. But let me say from the outset, I don't view this as a Republican-Democrat issue. I don't see it as a partisan issue. I see this as a bipartisan issue. When it comes to national security and securing our borders, this should be a bipartisan issue. And I think, if anything, at yesterday's authorization, Mr. Cuellar and I sponsored several bills together, one to double the size of the best teams, another one to provide border area security initiative grants for local law enforcement and sheriffs, and that's as it should be. So I'm not going to try to spin this into a political theater event. What I'm interested in are these two generals who have taken a lot of time out of their, they're busy, but they took a lot of time to write what I thought was a very good report. We've talked about maybe coming up with a 5-point plan, if you will, or a 10-point plan in terms of how we can better secure this nation from this threat. And so I'd like to hear from the two generals in terms of if you had to prioritize, say, the top 5 or top 10 points in terms of what we need to do as a nation. How would you respond to that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me begin by thanking Chief Deputy Aguilar for her testimony. And I might add, I don't have a bit of disagreement with anything she said about El Paso as a city or a county. Although I might add that I had a meeting personally in a closed room with 100 people from both Juarez and El Paso within the last 18 months, and that entire room, both sides of the border said they feel intimidated. And a senior police official in the city of El Paso, in response to a question from a Mexican national, said, if these people come across the border, I will not be able to protect you. I was astonished. There were Texas DPS was in the room when we had this seminar to educate me on what was going on. So I do think, though, that we should accept as a reality, nonpartisan. I'm not running for public office, and I'm not associated with any party. I've been working that border for a long time. The rural areas are absolutely threatened, and Dr. Victor's testimony should be given great credence. Now, having said that, number one, if we took the border from one end to the other, the 24 southwest border counties, and made a state of them, you'd say a couple of things. Number one, they're 51st in per capita income, 51st in health care. You go on, they're the poorest counties in the United States, but they're number one in documented federal crime. And so I would argue this is not the responsibility of border sheriffs. Hudspeth County, 12 deputies, 5,000 square miles, an intimidated population, cartel presence in the county. We can't protect America unless the Border Patrol and the other parts of the system, you can't just increase manpower in the Border Patrol. The Federal Marshal Service, DEA, FBI, the court system has to be enhanced also. We've got to get resources adequate to counter this challenge. I think the second aspect of it, not the subject of this hearing, we can't protect America unless we reform immigration law in the United States. We've got 10 million people running our agriculture system, meat packing, daycare centers, etc. These humble, hardworking, spiritual people are here making America's economy work. They can't go to the local police and ask for protection because they're here illegally. They can't wire their money home to their mother. We simply must reform and have a guest worker status where these people are protected by OSHA safety standards, minimum wage, etc., without which we're not going to affect the border. And then finally, I think we got to get real assets to the Mexican government. I think I mentioned we've given them 11 helicopters in 3 years. Thankfully, during the Clinton administration, we got over 250 aircraft to the Colombians, who have turned the situation around in a 10-year struggle. Those would be my top 3 recommendations.
And let me say in response to that as well that we've met with President Calderon several times, and I have tremendous admiration and respect for what he's doing. And I agree with you. It's anemic, the funding. The Merida initiative has had some success, but we need to look at post-Merida. What are we going to do? We have been working on a plan to get the Colombian special forces that have been trained by our guys to work with the Mexican military to crack down on these drug cartels in Mexico. I think they assimilate better, and I think President Calderon's very interested in that idea. And I think we're going to make some progress on that. My time is somewhat limited.
I hope you heard that. We are training the special forces in South America. I hope you heard this, right? I want you guys to pay attention to what they're saying. Aside from the fact that they're saying that they wanted to give some kind of status to these illegal migrants in that area, I wanted you guys to pay attention to how this dovetails it on. Oh, yes, it does. Take a listen.
But I have to touch on the, Dr. Vickers, you talked about the other than Mexicans. I know that number, the seasonal worker is not the threat here. The threat is the other than Mexican coming in. I think the events of this week demonstrating that an Iranian operative was reaching out to what he thought was a Los Zetas drug cartel member to arrange a team of assassins to bring explosive devices across the Mexican border into the United States to take out the Saudi ambassador, highlights this threat that we face.
Did you hear that? I just want to clarify. Did you hear that? Did you hear that loud and clear, right? I want you guys to listen to this loud and clear. This is from 10 years ago. I wonder if you guys spotted me in the audience. This is very, very important because, the whole HSBC thing happened because someone, went to these dumb idiots that were doing the audits that were hired to make people fail. So some nice person volunteered their time and said, let me show you how this is done. Oh, whoa, what's that? Oh dear, you're going to look so great. People are going to be so proud of you guys because you're doing such a great job uncovering the money laundering for the cartels through HSBC that Comey is on the board of. I didn't say that. The person didn't say that.
And when you look at Hezbollah's 1980 fatwa, they say engaging in drug production and trafficking, explicitly stating that making these drugs for Satan, America, and the Jews, if we cannot kill them with guns, we will kill them with drugs. And then in 2008, El Universal reported that the Mexican Sinaloa drug cartel was sending elite assassins to train on weapons and explosives with Islamic radicals in Iran. Now, whether that's a report. Is this happening? What is the Islamic Hezbollah connection to Latin America? We know there is a Tehran-Caracas connection to Venezuela. We know that Hezbollah there's a heavy presence of Hezbollah in the Western Hemisphere. And if I could refer to this, here we have the Iranian operative, Mr. Mansour, who thinks he's contracting with these drug cartels who are pictured on the right here with these assault weapons, these AK-47s.
Mm-hmm.
This is a threat. And this is one we've been warning about for years. And that's my concern as a former counterterrorism official and as a member of this committee who is looking at border security issues. This makes the border that much more imperative that we have to get it secure.
Mr. Chairman, will you yield on that point?
I want to hear from the witnesses, if that's okay, and I'd be happy to have a further discussion.
You do understand what's being said here. While we're being distracted with children, right? The real threat is there. This is from 10 years ago. It's from 10 years ago, right? That there was a Caracas connection with Venezuela, all right? This is where you guys need to see just how long they've planned this. While we're distracted with children at the border, because that's what you can report, right? People need to revisit history. Oh, Pompeo called out Kerry. He's called him out again and again and again. It's not news. So the question you should be asking yourself is why all the media are recycling news. They're all, oh, Joe Biden's going to step down by June. We know he had to finish the 100 days. That's up in just about, 3 days. Can't do it right away because it shows that they waited 100 days. So maybe he'll get sick and step down because we all know what's really going on. So they're distracting you with the children, right? And we're using that to create attention to the border crisis. But no one is talking about the real crisis, the fake passports, the golden passports, and how one person, they only need one person to cross that border, strap themselves with powders, and that's it. You're done. You're simply done. This is how they cause chaos. So both the right and the left media are doing a great disservice because they're keeping you distracted. But I'm not saying that it's not a crisis. And what these children are going through is not a big deal. It's a massive deal. It's a big problem. Okay. Big problem. But what you should be asking yourself is, why aren't we talking about the things that are most important right now, which is our national security? All right. Not the children. National security. This is what we need to focus on. This is what we need to be paying attention to. Now, I want you to see the response to how we nabbed this person who thought he was working with the right cartel people and what they said.
But to the two generals, I mean, you're giving a military strategic assessment of this threat. How do you view this connection? I think it highlights even more so that we need to be paying attention. And granted, most of this violence is taking place in Mexico. 40,000 people killed in Mexico. Whereas when I went in there, 6,000 people killed, I had the same security I had going into Afghanistan. So what needs to be done? General Scales, I want to give you the opportunity to
I'll be
respond.
very brief. I'm a soldier, and we wrote this report from a standpoint of the military. But what I'd like to do is cut through the politics for a minute and give you 4 or 5 things that need to be done in addition to more funding. Money is important, but other things we've discovered are equally important that don't necessarily deal with finances. First of all, we believe that Texas is a template for many reasons that we talk about in the report, particularly the aggressive action of the Texas Rangers. In many ways, the Texans' system has proved to be one of the best we've seen. Secondly, we need to improve coordination, communications, intelligence gathering between state, local, and federal. And we need to focus right here, right there, the tactical side of this battle, whereas we know all wars, Afghanistan, Iraq, or the southern border of Texas are won or lost is at the tactical level of war. We don't put the resources at the tactical level, I believe, that we should. So it's not just the money, but it's where you put it. I think we need to do a better job of cross-border, to use my phrase, joint operations with the Mexican military. I understand all of the political problems beginning with the Mexican War in the mid-19th century. I got it. But in those few instances where the Rangers and the Feds and the locals and the Mexicans operated together on both sides of the border, they effectively shut down drug trafficking for days. That needs to be a template for how to do it. We need to use cost-effective, cheap, off-the-shelf technology to build, not just build a fence, but to build a fence that's strategic in nature and can be observed. You know, there's an old saying in the military, though, any obstacle that's not covered by observation or fire is useless, and that's the same thing true here. In the state of Texas, they've taken deer cameras and GPSs and cell phones and put them together in cheap anti-intrusion systems that have worked extraordinarily well. And the final point I'll make is schooling. You know, one thing we learn in the military is a learning institution, and information sharing, teaching, and learning between all 3 levels, state, local, and federal, but particularly local. It's important for us to stay ahead of the enemy intellectually, not just physically, because the cartels are a smart, adaptive, flexible, heartless, and cruel organization. And if they outthink us as well as outfight us, all the federal money in the world won't make a difference.
And it won't, especially when you have people like Kamala Devi Harris, who has tight, very tight connections to cartels from her time as Attorney General in California. So money, drugs, power. I don't understand why the media is recycling the news, because all this news that you see is old news. We have been seeing this. We know about this. We understand that this has been ongoing. So why is it that it's suddenly new? Right? Now, John Kerry, he's a traitor. We know that. He was called out in front of Congress, right? He was called out in front of Congress. Here is John Kerry blasting Congress for the Iran letter. Listen to this.
My reaction to the letter was utter disbelief. But to write to the leaders in the middle of a negotiation, particularly the leaders that they have criticized other people for even engaging with or writing to write them and suggest that they're going to give a constitutional lesson, which, by the way, was absolutely incorrect, is quite stunning. It's incorrect when it says that Congress could actually modify the terms of an agreement at any time. That's flat wrong. And it purports to tell the world that if you want to have any confidence in your dealings with America, they have to negotiate with 535 members of Congress.
Yes, they do,
That is
because they
both
represent
untrue
us.
and profoundly a bad suggestion to make.
What bad suggestion, Carrie? They represent us. And therefore, if anyone wants to negotiate with our nation that has to do with our economy, our security, our healthcare, they do have to go through Congress, because Congress represents us. And people need to remember that. No one makes decisions for us. No one is above the law. And no one tells us, hey, know your place, man, because if you don't like it, too bad. Like the people of New Hampshire heard. Listen to this.
It would say, my parting thoughts are, having read some of the letters in the local paper, and I know one of the letters had in a phrase concerning the report that was done in Entertown, Michigan, that said anything less would be unacceptable. Like I said, we live in a representative democracy. We might not like the result that you get, or we might not like the decisions that are made. It's not up to you to decide if something's unacceptable. The problem when you say that might be unacceptable to you, but you're going to have to learn how to deal with it.
Did you hear that? The co-chairman, Ross McLeod, picked the New Hampshire auditor to tell Windham residents that it's not up to you to decide if it's something unacceptable. Deal with it. I think he needs to be reminded the power that the citizens have. Because John Kerry, this audio is from 2015. John Kerry said that Americans don't have a voice. Congress has no say in anything, right? Has no say in anything in 2015. These are the people, right, that are ruining our nation. Listen to what else he says, because he was appalled that Congress sent a letter to Iran. Like, how dare you tell them that they need to go through Congress? That's not true. It is, because we are in charge of Congress. And if we say so, Congress says so. That's the way it goes. We negotiate our economy. We negotiate our national security. We negotiate our healthcare. We negotiate our education. I think we all forgot that and have allowed these demagogues, these self-proclaimed kings and queens, to put us in our place because we've made so many concessions. Oh, sure, take my privacy. Oh, sure, take my identification. Oh, sure, I prefer to be safe and a prisoner rather than free and the master of my own destiny.
I think.
Mr. Secretary, I know this is a well-written speech, but
not a speech,
you've been
my
at
friend.
this for
This
5
is not
minutes.
a speech.
Yeah.
This is a statement about the impact of this irresponsible letter.
And you have a lot of
the letter
forms
does
to
not
do that.
have legal authority. And
5
I'm sorry
minutes
if
and
people up
26,
here don't want to
5
hear it.
minutes and 26 seconds later, you finished. I will say that I didn't sign the letter. I'm very disappointed, though, that you've gone back on your statement that any agreement must pass muster with Congress. The way we pass muster here is we vote. And I think all of us are very disappointed with the veto threat and the stiff arming that is taking place. But with that,
But Senator, let me just, Mr. Chairman, let me just.
Senator Gardner.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You see that? That was Mr. Corker telling him, oh, so now you're saying that we have no say and that you'll veto us if we decide not to go along. This is how it happens. Now, here is a hearing. I want you guys not only to listen, but to watch carefully. Watch carefully. And see what is being said and how it's being said and who's there. Take a listen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, gentlemen. We certainly appreciate your indulgence. We know it's been a long time. In the context of these statements is I'd like to ask my questions. From 1994, so not too long ago, right? We're talking about 15-year context of this deal for the most strict portions of it. So from 1994, the entire world will be safer as we slow the spread of nuclear weapons is one statement. And also the United States and international inspectors will carefully monitor North Korea to make sure it keeps its commitments. And we all know that's, of course, quotes from President Clinton that none of that happened. I mean, North Korea is what it is, and we are where we are. Within that context, Secretary Kerry, reading your quote recently with a reporter from Al Arabiya, I don't know how to interpret at this point in time, except to take it at face value, in relation to chance of death to America, death to Israel. We're going to continue our policy. And then it's very troubling. It's very disturbing. It's very troubling. And we'll have to wait and see. What will we have to wait and see, Secretary Kerry? And before you answer, 1979, 52 U.S. hostages, 444 days. 1983, the U.S. Marine barracks, 241 Americans killed. 1992, the Israeli embassy in Argentina bombed. 2011, the attempted assassination of the Saudi ambassador in D.C., the killings and maimings of hundreds in Iraq and Afghanistan, not to mention support of the Assad, Hezbollah, Hamas, and activities in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen. What will we have to wait and see? What was
to see the implementation of the plan, Congressman. No, look, you and I can have a speech off if you want.
I don't want to have a speech off. I want to understand your comments.
We could have we could have a competition for who is angrier about some of the things Iran has done historically. We understand they've killed Americans. We understand what they did in Khobar terrorists. We understand all of this. But they were marching towards a nuclear weapon.
Mr. Secretary, you must understand, I appreciate this is my time. You must understand the American people see Iran as like a crocodile or a shark that does what it does. And we're saying, well, we're going to give the crocodile or the shark a few more teeth and let's see if it does something different.
That's just not accurate. That's not accurate.
But that's what we see.
We have left in
Let me say this too. You have said that we don't have a better option. Keep on saying, well, you haven't provided a better option.
Congressman,
first of all, Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, it is not Congress's job. This is the administration. And if you would use the treaty process as provided by the Constitution, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. Furthermore, you say, well, this is the only deal we can get, that there's no better deal. Congress has a long history of instituting better deals. Example are 200 treaties, including 80 multilateral accords modified by Congress, including the Arms Control Agreement, SALT II, and the Threshold Test Ban Treaty that failed to reach a vote and were modified. So there is a history for that of getting a better deal. And if the Ayatollah doesn't like it and doesn't want to negotiate it, oh, boo-hoo. We're here for America. We stand for America. You represent America. With that having been said, it's in another interview, if you don't get a majority in Congress to support this deal, doesn't that undermine the deal? And your statement, it's abbreviated, they don't care over there. And I'm assuming you mean Iraq, as long as the deal is implemented. And that's what we care about, that this deal being implemented. So do you care more about this deal or the UN's approval or American sovereignty and the approval of the American people through their duly elected representatives, Mr. Secretary?
Congressman, I don't need any lessons from you about who I represent. I've represented and fought for our country since I was out of college.
And God bless you for your service.
Don't give me any
sir.
lessons about that, okay? Now, let me just make it crystal clear to you. This is America's interest because America is the principal guarantor of security in the region, and particularly with respect to some of our closest friends. Now, we believe that Iran was marching towards a weapon or the capacity to have a weapon, and we've rolled that back, Congress.
Okay, that's your opinion.
That's
and I understand
indisputable.
That
No,
let me ask you this.
that's
Let
a
me ask you
fact.
this, Mr. Secretary.
That's a fact.
Is it possible that Iran will acquire Russian air defense missiles in relation to the arms embargo lifting to protect nuclear sites? Possible or not possible?
Say that again.
Is it possible that Iran will acquire Russian air defense missiles to protect nuclear sites?
Those are not in the agreement. They have A300s that...
In the relation to the arms embargo lifting?
No, they're not banned by the arms embargo. They're outside of it.
We're going to Mr. Brandon Boyle of Pennsylvania. And
He didn't like that heat. See, this has been going on for a very long time. Let's revisit our president and what he had to say about John Kerry, because he should be prosecuted. And that's a fact. He should definitely be prosecuted. Take a listen to what our president had said, because it's quite important to revisit history sometimes because we forget.
To prompt you to send an aircraft carrier to the region.
Well, they were threatening, and we have information. We have information that you don't want to know about. They were very threatening, and we just want to have. We have to have great security for this country and for a lot of other places.
Risk of military confrontation, sir?
I guess you could say that always, right? Isn't it? I mean, always. I don't want to say no, but hopefully that won't happen. We have one of the most powerful ships in the world that's loaded up, and we don't want to have to do anything. What I'd like to see with Iran, I'd like to see them call me. You know, John Kerry speaks to them a lot. John Kerry tells them not to call. That's a violation of the Logan Act. And frankly, he should be prosecuted on that. But my people don't want to do anything that's, only the Democrats do that kind of stuff. You know, if it were the opposite way, they'd prosecute him under the Logan Act. But John Kerry violated the Logan Act. He's talking to Iran and has many meetings and many phone calls, and he's telling them what to do. That is a total violation of the Logan Act, because what they should be doing is, their economy is a mess ever since I took away the Iran deal. They have inflation that's the highest number I've ever heard. They're having riots every weekend and during the week even. And what they should be doing is calling me up, sitting down, we can make a deal, a fair deal. We just don't want them to have nuclear weapons, not too much to ask. And we would help put them back into great shape. They're in bad shape right now. I look forward to the day where we can actually help Iran. We're not looking to hurt Iran. I want them to be strong and great and have a great economy. But they're listening to John Kerry, who's violated a very important element of what he's supposed to be doing. He violated the Logan Act, plain and simple. He shouldn't be doing that.
We got pictures.
But they should call, and if they do, we're open to talk to them. We have no secrets, and they can be very, very strong financially. They have great potential, very much like North Korea. North Korea has tremendous potential economically, and I don't think he's going to blow that. I don't think so.
Can I circle back to trade?
So we got pictures of John Kerry meeting with Iranian officials, in France over this time. So John Kerry is back in the news now, and everyone's talking about how Pompeo has pretty much called him out when he's done it before. He's been called out for years, and no one does anything. So any of your congressmen or senators that have been there since 2015, 2016 don't deserve to be reelected unless they've actually stood for something. That's very, very important. Very important. So in other news, John Kerry is in China during U.S. delegations with the Taiwan visit, which is quite interesting because this is coming from, Chinese news themselves. I want you guys to see it just in case this video disappears. We can archive it. Here we go. Let's get this going. So that way you can see who, what, when, where. Oops. There we go. All right. Here's John Kerry. And this is...
Staying on the U.S. visit as it gets underway, U.S. climate envoy John Kerry is in China for 3 days of talks on climate change. Kerry arrived in Shanghai on Wednesday, the same day that former Senator Chris Dodd landed in Taiwan. President Tsai Ing-wen appeared to allude to Kerry when receiving Dodd on Thursday.
The Biden administration is actively working with the international community on the issue of climate change. Taiwan is committed to carbon reduction and developing green energy. I believe this is a key area in which we can cooperate over the long term. Dodd has come as a special envoy for Biden. What I said earlier about him coming with a message for Tsai, that is extremely plausible. John Kerry, the special presidential envoy for climate change affairs, went to Shanghai. He won't be meeting Xi Jinping as he's not going to Beijing, and afterward he's going to Seoul. This means China is simply one stop on an itinerary.
An analyst points out that Kerry is an official presidential envoy, while Dodd is a confidant to the US president with no official capacity. The two are in Shanghai and Taipei, respectively, for roughly the same amount of time. The analyst says their arrival shows the careful calculus of the Biden administration as it weighs its Indo-Pacific strategy.
And so what you're going to hear about next is that Kerry's going to be hopping over to New Zealand and then from New Zealand somewhere else. And that's why on May 4th, we're going to have these discussions, because it's about time we let some cats out of her bag, right? So a lot of, in the next hour, we're going to be talking a little bit about cryptocurrency. A lot of people are salty because they invested in XRP. But I have talked about it in 2018, 2019, 2020 as to how this is a secret, but not so much of a secret, right? The XDR currency is the currency of debt that the IMF runs. XRP is their digital. And I'm going to show you that because a lot of people, think they're very well versed. But you have to understand, just like Tortor, the deep state has many, many onions of layers like onions. So you're going to see that, how it comes down to it. Now, continuing on with this whole Iran thing, there was a report yesterday on Newsmax about Iran. And I want you guys to listen to it. It's quite interesting. Actually, very interesting. Here we go. Let's play this.
This domestic nightmare to foreign policy here for just a second. We are quickly approaching Joe Biden's 100th day in office, and our adversaries like Iran and China are becoming ever bolder, and we keep helping them. Biden revoking the permit for the Keystone XL pipeline, of course, forced Canada to go to China to meet their energy needs. That's money to China. Biden also re-entered into the Paris Climate Accords, another move that benefits China. And then we have this. Many other examples, by the way, but check this out. A bombshell of sorts discovered in the New York Times today. The Times buried this detail 21 paragraphs into a story about Javad Zarif, Iran's foreign minister. Quote, former Secretary of State John Kerry informed him that Israel had attacked Iranian interests in Syria at least 200 times. I'm going to let you digest this for a second. Think about it. If true, that means the Secretary of State John Kerry under Obama is trying to kiss up to the Iranians, an evil regime, and get the Iran nuclear deal done, which would be a huge accomplishment for him and a very selfish move. Kerry sells out one of America's greatest allies to the largest state sponsor of terror in the world, selling out Israel to Iran to try and get this stupid deal done that we all know was horrible. Kerry, for his part, denied the allegation tonight with this tweet. Hopefully, we're going to learn more about this in the coming days. But this is a really big story, especially because he's in this current administration. To break this down further, this allegation, we spoke with former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley earlier. Ambassador Haley, thank you so much for taking the time. It's good to see you. I want to start with a pretty troubling story about John Kerry from back when he was Secretary of State. The New York Times actually buried a detail on him in a story about Iran's foreign minister.
Rhino.
Quote, former Secretary of State John Kerry informed him that Israel had attacked Iranian interests in Syria at least 200 times. This is back when they were trying to get the Iran nuclear deal, of course. You tweeted today, this is disgusting on many levels. Biden and Kerry have to answer for why Kerry would be tipping off Iran, the #1 sponsor of terror, while stabbing one of our greatest partners, Israel, in the back. This is a really big story. What exactly do you think should happen here?
I mean, Rob, this is truly horrifying. I mean, the idea that Kerry would do this is appalling in its own right, but Biden and Kerry have to answer for this. He should not be sitting on the National Security Council. He shouldn't be involved with any of our foreign policy if this is what he does. And then the worst part is to stab our ally Israel in the back. and take up for Iran, who's the largest state sponsor of terrorism. It's ludicrous.
I mean, we talk about John Kerry a lot. I mean, we poke fun at him a lot because he gives us so much ammo. I mean, he really is foolish. I mean, to think that you're going to get anywhere by throwing Iran some nuggets that they shouldn't have. I mean, how foolish is he and this administration on the threat of Iran?
You know, it goes back to Obama. This is Obama 2.0. Obama loved Iran. I mean, and he took it to Israel every chance he got and even humiliated them right until the very end. And, you know, now we're watching basically Biden's falling all over himself to do business with Iran again, which is just everyone around the world is not going to understand why Biden is doing this. But really, to do this to our friend Israel is just disgusting.
It is unbelievable. It doesn't make any sense. The Biden administration last week saying it's willing to lift sanctions on Iran. This was a State Department spokesman, Ned Price, on Friday.
There are sanctions that are inconsistent with the JCPOA. And as we have said, if Iran resumes its compliance with the nuclear deal, meaning that if Iran once again becomes subject to the most stringent verification and monitoring regime ever negotiated, we would be prepared to lift those sanctions.
Is there any way that they can actually trust Iran? Is there any way that you can watch over them enough to actually trust them to lift the sanctions?
Oh, I went for President Trump. I went to the IAEA that monitors Iran and really did some questions before we got out of the deal. And the one thing I found out is, number one, they were violating multiple UN resolutions. They were on top of that. They weren't allowing any of the facilities to be checked for 45 days. They weren't allowing any of the research institutions or military installations to be looked at. And so it was really, when you look at what they were doing already, they were lying and they were cheating against America, and then they took all our money. The idea that Biden wants to go get back in this deal, it makes us look so weak around the world that he's just trying to appease them. It doesn't make sense, and I think this is going to backfire.
It's so incredibly foolish. Again, it makes no sense to me. Turning to China now for a second, another big problem. The Chinese commissioned 60,000 tons worth of major vessels earlier this month, including a new nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine. What are your concerns with China? What should the Biden administration be thinking right now?
China is our number one threat around the world. And the idea that they are continuing, they have the largest naval fleet in the world. They have more air defense system missiles than we have. And Biden's going and cutting defense spending. I mean, I think that China sees that we're distracted. I think they're making their moves. We saw that during COVID. And I think they're going to continue to do that. And the one thing that we have to quit thinking is if we're nice to them, they're going to want to be like us. They don't want to be like us. They are communists. They want to be communists. And they're out to be the superpower of the world. It's the reason why I think we should boycott the Olympics. I mean, if you look at the fact that China is 1 million Muslim Uyghurs being in concentration camps, making them change their name, change their religion, making them drink and go against their religion, all of these horrific things, slave labor, the fact that they're doing that and no one's calling them out on it. And then you go and you look at President Xi, and he's basically commission that says any company that does business with the Chinese military, with China, has to cooperate with the Chinese military. I mean, think about our tech. Think about data that all of our tech companies have, and now that the Chinese military have it as well.
Yeah, it's something else. You're set to host the Iowa GOP's annual Lincoln Dinner. You're going to help fundraise for Republican candidates. Tell us a little bit about that and the work you're doing, I guess, for 2022.
Well, you know, basically, prior to November, I was campaigning there a good bit. We worked for Joni Ernst. We got flipped 2 House seats with Ashley Hinson and Marinette Miller Meeks. And so going back to Iowa, we're working on defending those 2 seats again. Chuck Grassley's up. The governor, Kim Reynolds, is up. Yeah. And so it's, you know, another important year in Iowa, and I appreciate the opportunity of going and helping them out again.
I want to talk about 2024 for a second. You've indicated potentially running. You say you're not running for president if Donald Trump runs for president. Give us an indication where your head's at on all this.
Well, I think that 2024 is a long ways away, and anyone talks a bit foolish. I think that our focus should be on 2022, winning the House back, winning the Senate back. I don't think I need to make a decision on 2024 yet. And so I'm going to continue to do everything I can. In terms of the president, we had a great working relationship We got a lot done in foreign policy. I'm proud of all of the work that the administration did. And out of respect, I would never do anything to go against him. He knows that. I would have a conversation with him and talk to him about it should we decide we want to pursue it. But no, I mean, I have a great respect for him and I would never consider running against him.
Okay. Nikki Haley, former UN ambassador, thank you so much for the time. Good to talk to you.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Bye. Yeah, I don't like rhinos at all. So let's take a break, get those coffee cups filled. And here's a soft, smooth jazz. It's not smooth jazz. Here's another favorite of mine. I'm going to be showing you the video too. So for that reason, I'm pretty sure YouTube's going to knock me off. So I will see you guys right after this short video. Oops.
Just soon can get a doobie. Hi, I'm praying that the world changes soon.